students. Every time when I begin the class, I always tell you I am happy to connect with you on yet another class in this online platform. But in reality, every time when I tell you this, I have this experience of FOMO and FOBA. FOMO and FOBA. This is an experience that most of us have started feeling, especially during the time of this pandemic. FOMO, the fear of missing out, and FOBA, the fear of being alone. Usually when we talk about technology, we always used to say that technology dehumanizes an individual, takes away the humane qualities of an individual. The individual creates a world of their own, unaware of what is happening around them. But God always has a plan, even in the midst of this debilitating situation. God has made us realize the hard way how much we miss out on socialization. This social distancing period has taught us that basically man is always and will always be a social animal. So I hope it is the same experience on your side too, but I have always felt it. Every time when I connect with you with a class on this online platform, I miss out my student friends. I miss out the physical presence in the classroom. And that fear of being alone, even though we live in the cozy comfort of our family with God's grace, with our dear ones safe and intact, but still then we miss out both on our personal and social life, that human touch. So let us hope that this situation is going to wipe out soon and we would be all back to the normal situation where we have a human face-to-face interaction that would make us all complete individuals. So on this note, once again, I would like to invite you to a class on gender, school and society. So in the last class, we have seen certain basic terminology related to gender issues, starting from what exactly is gender, how these so-called social characteristics that decide for each gender what is their role, what is their priority, what are their privileges, how these characteristics differ from one society to another. And we have also seen that there are certain factors that act as a barrier or hindrance that lead to an inequality, a divide between gender, which we have seen as gender inequality. And in one of the reports published by UNDP, United Nations Development Program, in the year 2016, the report said that out of 146 nations, India was placed or ranked in the 130th position as far as the gender inequality index was considered. So that shows the extent of existence of this gender inequality prevalent in our society. So we have seen the last class what is gender inequality, and actually in any progressive society when there is inequality, we have to fight for establishing gender equality. We have also seen what is a gender equality and related to that gender equity, often confusing terms. Both are based on the principle of fairness. We have seen the other class, and we have also seen gender equality is a quantitative concept where equal sharing, equal division of resources and opportunities is done, whereas gender equity is a qualitative concept. Then we had made a stop with gender parity. Gender parity, it is a statistical measure which provides a numerical value to male-female or girl-boy ratio with respect to certain indicators. And if my memory is right, in the last class, we stopped with an example for gender parity, that is a gender pay gap. And the gender pay gap is the discrepancies or differences in the earnings made by both men and women. And studies point out that out of the world's poor, 70% of the poor among the total world population are those belonging to the female category. So that shows a clear case of discrimination. as far as gender pay gap is concerned, the studies point out that out of the total global population, 70% of the poor account for the female population, showing a clear case of discrimination towards the female gender. And as far as the Indian context is considered, we have seen that there exists gender discrimination, and on various grounds, whether it is with regard to basic availability of basic facilities like education or health or employment, we have statistical proof to show that the female gender is always at a disadvantage. So there is a clear case of gender discrimination as far as the female gender is considered. So gender discrimination. Gender discrimination, also known as gender bias or gender disparity. So gender discrimination is yet another term that we need to be familiar, because this is something that exists in the modern day society. Gender bias, or you can also call it as gender disparity, gender differences. No, the term itself is self-explanatory. Gender discrimination. When one gender, the opportunities and privileges of one gender get discriminated upon. When one gender is at a disadvantage. And whenever there is a case of gender discrimination, that gender needs to be empowered. That is again an aim of any progressive society, gender empowerment. And gender empowerment is again a term which has been of very great importance, much in the limelight in the recent past. Gender empowerment. And as we said, since the female gender is discriminated upon, we have seen these empowerment programs favoring the female gender in the term Women Empowerment Program. So let's see what is gender empowerment. Here again, the term itself explains empowering or strengthening a gender, or providing strength and confidence so as to face life and claim one's rights. Providing strength and confidence to control one's life and claim one's rights. That is gender empowerment. Providing strength and confidence to control your life and claim your rights. And it is based on 3 factors. Gender empowerment is based on 3 factors. One is self-confidence. The next is exposure. And lastly, independence. Self-confidence, exposure and independence makes a gender empowered. So that is gender empowerment. So whenever there exists case of gender discrimination or bias, naturally there has to be an empowerment, gender empowerment. So we have seen, as far as the Indian social system is considered, Indian society, when you take the society at the backdrop, there is a clear case of discrimination by the, or discrimination meted out to the female gender. So last class we have seen that we need to have a historical perspective regarding the status of women during different periods in history, in order to get a clearer, deeper understanding regarding gender issues prevalent in Indian context. So let us see the status of women during different phases of history. Status of women. So in fact, the status of women provides checkered history. As far as India is considered, it provides a checkered history. So we start with the Dravidian period. Way back in history, how was the status of women during the Dravidian period, followed by the Vedic or the Rig Vedic period. What picture did the Rig Vedic period pose as far as women's position was considered? Next, chronologically, the later Vedic or the Epic age. Later Vedic or the Epic age, followed by the Buddhist period. Then we have here Buddhist period followed by the post-Vedic. The post-Vedic period. The position or status of women during the post-Vedic, naturally the pre-independence period, the post-independence period, and what is called the 21st century woman. So this is how we would have a brief view on how the position of women evolved during the different periods or stages in history. Now, starting with the Dravidian period, historical records provides only a brief glimpse regarding the Dravidian period. There are again controversies regarding the arrival of Aryans and Dravidians, so we are not much concerned about the pure historical aspect. So the Dravidian period provides accords a very good status to women, because Dravidian people were basically very less aggressive, freedom-loving people. Naturally, this freedom was extended to the female gender too. Women enjoyed a happy position. There were not much restriction. They had access to education. And if at all restrictions or restraints were imposed, that was only for their protection and safety. So overall, it was a very smooth picture painted during the Dravidian period as far as the women's position were considered. Now coming on to the Vedic period, the period of Vedas. During this period, we can, in a sentence, we can frame this period as the golden age as far as the status of women was considered. Women enjoyed full freedom during this period. They had full access to education. Male and female education was not at all differentiated. Upanayana ceremony, you might be familiar with Upanayana. Upanayana ceremony, the sacred thread ceremony, which gave one an access to procure Vedic education. The Upanayana or the thread ceremony, both boys and girls had equal access. Girls had freedom to choose their life partners. Even though child marriage was in prevalence, they had full freedom to choose their life partner, but widow remarriage was prohibited, and women enjoyed a good position as far as socio-religious ceremonies were considered. And even in the household work, women extended a helping hand to their husbands in the agricultural work. Every family was a center of production, with spinning and weaving work actively engaged upon by women. And women being educated, they took an active role in all the philosophical debates and deliberations. But only thing is that as far as economic freedom was concerned, there were certain restraints or restrictions on economic freedom enjoyed by women. Otherwise, and moreover, unmarried daughters had full rights over their father's property, and but married daughters had a lesser role as far as their inheriting their father's property was considered. And in the absence of a male child, the full rights rested upon the female child. And even during the Vedic period, the preference of the society was always for a male child. But on the whole, in every way, it was a golden period for women during this Vedic or Rigvedic period. And moving on to the epic age, the picture continued to be the same, with women enjoying a very comfortable position in the society. And the epic age, as you know, this was the period when the two epics of Hinduism, namely Ramayana and Mahabharata, came into existence. And in both these epics, women were pictured as highly educated individuals. In Ramayana, the ideal Hindu women were portrayed in this epic, and in Mahabharata, women were seen as capable members, capable of giving advice to their husbands. So during this epic period also, we find that women enjoyed a respectable, a privileged position in the society. Now, coming to the later Vedic period. Later Vedic is what we discuss now. Coming to the Buddhist period. During the Buddhist period, now there were women, the position of women, even though not very highly privileged, but still then they continued to enjoy a respectable position, and women had their own groups called Sanghas, S-A-N-G-H-A-S, Sanghas. And one of the prominent Sangha was Bhikshuni Sangha, and it was an association for women which provided a platform for women to actively encourage their creative potential, to engage in cultural and social activities, and women enjoyed a very good place in the public field. In the public arena, they were given full freedom to take part in various activities. So that was during the Buddhist period. But during the post-Vedic, you can find a mention of post-Vedic as the medieval period too. the post-Vedic or medieval period was in fact the darkest period in the history of women as far as Indian society is concerned. The darkest period in the sense that women were not given access to education, the practice of sati was in prevalence, widow remarriage was not allowed, child marriage was in existence, and all sort of atrocities were inflicted on women. So that was one of the most deplorable situation for women in the annals of Indian history, the post-Vedic or medieval period, and that period lasted till the advent of Britishers to India. So all sorts of atrocities, women had no freedom to pursue education, their position, their privileges, their rights in the society was much deplorable during the post-Vedic period. And then in the pre-independence period, once the Britishers arrived in the country, the situation was no different. Women were in a highly deplorable situation, with all these practices continuing to prevail in the society. But the Britishers as well as the social reformers, as you might be familiar, taking a flashback to your school days, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, all these reformers played a very important role in uplifting the position of women, and many legislations preventing the child marriage, then as far as the widow remarriage is concerned, many legislations or many act or policies were passed by the Britishers, and the freedom reform and the reformers also played their role in uplifting the position of women. And it was during this period, the pre-independence period, Gandhiji gave the clarion call to women to join in the freedom struggle, and the women immediately extended their full support, and their involvement in the national movement was in fact a platform that gave them a sense of equality with men. And there came up various women's organizations which began to represent the needs and interests of women. So that was again the beginning of revival of women's status in Indian society, the pre-independence. And then the post-independence period, as you know, with the Indian constitution guaranteeing full freedom to access any levels of education, choice of occupation, all these were guaranteed to women. There were many acts preventing child marriage, abolishing sati, giving women a right over their father's property, adult franchise, that is the right to vote, again giving them a role in the political arena. All these were introduced during the post-independence period. But we can never conclude that all these legislations and rights gave women their full status or full privilege or respect in the society. It naturally had a number of loopholes when it came to practical implementation, but still then lots of measures, the economy or the society was highly favorable for improving the position of women. And now we in the 21st century, where are we? As you know, Indian women has made their voices felt in the global platforms. But when I say this, that is never a generalization. There are exceptions to that. When we have to generalize, when we can say generally speaking, India in the 21st century is a country that favors women in every respect. Once we can say this statement, we can say that we are a women-friendly country. Even though women have proved their mettle, not only within the four walls of their home, but even visiting a space station, they have proved their mettle, that they are no less compared to their male counterparts. But still then, they have a long way to travel. So it is utter foolishness so as to break the potential or power of women, because they have already made their journey. It has taken off. But what can be done is, let us join hands. Both male and female, they have to work hand in hand, walk and work together, complementary to each other. And this can only realize the dream of a women-friendly nation. And hope that this day is not far ahead for India and Indians. On this positive note, I would like to wind up with today's class, hoping to meet you next with less of FOMO and FOBA feelings. It is a goodbye from Nishita.